Felt the quiet, persistent, and deeply unsettling sense that you are living a life that is not entirely your own? Have you ever stood in the midst of your own successes, your own relationships, your own carefully constructed identity, and felt a flicker of profound inauthenticity, as if you are merely an actor playing a role you were assigned long ago, reading from a script you never wrote? You are likely familiar with the silent, nagging voice that whispers in your most unguarded moments, the voice that asks, "Is this all there is?" You may harbor a deep, unarticulated fear, a primordial terror of what might happen if you were to let the mask slip, if you were to speak the unvarnished truth of your heart, if you were to finally unleash the raw, untamed, and formidable energies that you sense coiled like a dormant dragon deep within you. You are afraid of the chaos that might erupt, afraid of the collective disapproval that would surely follow. But most of all, you are profoundly afraid of the person you might become, a person unrecognizable to your current self. And so, you remain safe. You toe the line, you play the part, you diligently fulfill the expectations of your family, your culture, and your own timid ego. You live a reasonable, predictable, and quietly suffocating life. But Carl Jung, the great explorer of the soul's wilderness, would issue a dire and exhilarating warning. The life you are so carefully preserving is a gilded cage, and the person you are so afraid of becoming is in fact the very blueprint of your true self, yearning for existence. The philosophy of Carl Jung is not a comforting balm for the soul. It is a radical, terrifying, and ultimately liberating call to adventure. It is an invitation to embark upon the most dangerous and essential journey you will ever take, the journey to become who you're afraid to be. You began constructing your cage from the earliest moments of your life, brick by painstaking brick. This cage, in Jungian terms, is the persona. The persona, named after the masks worn by actors in ancient Greek theatre, is the carefully curated version of yourself that you present to the world for consumption. It is the good student, always prepared and eager to please. It is the dutiful daughter who sacrifices her own desires for the sake of family harmony. It is the strong, silent man who never betrays a hint of vulnerability. It is the successful professional whose identity is fused with their job title and accomplishments. It is the caring, selfless friend, always available, always supportive, never a burden. The persona is not in itself a negative thing. It is a necessary and functional tool for navigating the complex social world. It is the interface between your ego, your center of conscious identity, and the expectations of the collective. It allows for smooth social interactions and provides a sense of belonging. The problem, the profound and life-destroying danger, arises when you mistake the mask for your actual face. When the role you are playing becomes the only reality you know. For the vast majority of us, this is the default state of existence. We become so thoroughly identified with the part we are playing that we lose all contact with the vast, complex, and often contradictory reality of who we are beneath the surface. We become tragically one-dimensional. Our lives, stripped of their authentic, paradoxical nature, become predictable, scripted, and slowly, imperceptibly, drained of genuine vitality and meaning. The more heavily you identify with your persona, the more your life becomes a fortress under constant siege from within and without. You will be terrified of anything that threatens its integrity. You will fear criticism, not because it might be helpful, but because it threatens the competent mask. You will fear failure with an almost existential dread because it threatens the successful mask. You will fear intense, authentic emotions, both joy and sorrow, anger and passion, because they threaten the calm and reasonable mask. You begin to live in a state of perpetual, low-grade anxiety, your psychic energy consumed by the exhausting task of image management. You become the vigilant warden of your own prison, constantly policing your own thoughts, feelings, and impulses to ensure they align with the character you are supposed to be. This creates a profound sense of inner fragility, the gnawing imposter syndrome that haunts so many successful people, the secret fear that at any moment they will be found out. But the psyche, like nature itself, abhors a vacuum and relentlessly seeks balance. The more one-sided, controlled, and perfect your conscious life becomes, the more the unlived, unacknowledged parts of yourself begin to build up a tremendous, compensatory pressure in the unconscious. They gather like a storm front just over the horizon, a great subterranean volcano rumbling beneath the pristine streets of your well-ordered life, waiting for the inevitable moment of eruption. Here we must meet the first and most formidable of the figures you are afraid of: the shadow. The shadow is the personal unconscious, the repository of everything you have disowned, repressed, and denied about yourself in order to construct and maintain your shiny persona. It is your dark side, but it is not, as is often misunderstood, purely evil or negative. The shadow is simply everything that you are, but have refused to be. It certainly contains all the primitive, instinctual, and socially unacceptable parts of your nature that were deemed bad in your childhood. Your raw anger, your searing envy, your grasping greed, your untamed lust, your capacity for aggression and cruelty. These are the aspects that, if left unexamined, can indeed lead to destructive behavior. However, the shadow also contains a vast reservoir of positive, life-giving energy that was, for whatever reason, deemed unacceptable by your family, your school, or your culture. This is what Jung student Marie-Louise von Franz called the golden shadow. It holds your unlived creativity in a family that valued only practicality. It holds your untamed passion in a society that prized polite reserve. It holds your raw, unapologetic ambition in a gender role that demanded meekness. It holds your authentic voice, your righteous anger against injustice, your capacity for profound, earth-shaking change. You are afraid of your shadow because you have been meticulously taught to be. You have been conditioned to believe that to be a good, acceptable, and lovable person is to be the opposite of everything the shadow represents. And so, you spend a monumental amount of your life as precious energy, keeping this vital part of yourself locked away in the dungeon of your unconscious. But this psychic repression is a futile and catastrophic strategy. The shadow does not disappear just because you ignore it or deny its existence. It cannot be destroyed. It can only be integrated or projected. When left unintegrated, it festers in the darkness and turns toxic. An unacknowledged shadow will inevitably project itself onto the world around you. You will see the evil, the stupidity, or the immorality that you cannot accept in yourself in other people, in other political parties, in other nations. This is the psychological root of prejudice, fanaticism, scapegoating, and a perpetual sense of being a victim of a hostile world. The things that infuriate you most in others are often a direct clue to the nature of your own unexamined darkness. Furthermore, an unintegrated shadow will sabotage your life from within. It is the true source of your inexplicable moods, your crippling anxieties, your baffling depressions, your self-destructive habits and addictions. It is the slip of the tongue that reveals a hidden resentment, the accidental mistake that scuttles your success, the sudden, disproportionate burst of rage that destroys a relationship. It is the monster that rattles the cage of your carefully controlled life, demanding to be seen. The journey to become who you're afraid to be is, first and foremost, the journey to turn and face this monster, to take the lantern of your consciousness and descend into the dungeon of your own psyche. It is the terrifying realization that you must have a dialogue with this feared figure, for it holds the very keys to your liberation, your vitality, and your wholeness. To become who you're afraid to be means you must have the immense courage to begin the arduous process of integrating your shadow. This does not mean acting out every dark impulse or unleashing your inner monster upon the world. That is not integration, that is possession. Integration is the opposite. It means making the unconscious conscious. It is the process of owning, with radical, unflinching honesty and without moralistic judgment, the totality of who you are. It is the ability to look inward and say, yes, I have within me the capacity for great anger, for envy, for selfishness, for cruelty. They are a part of my human inheritance, and they are a part of me. The profound paradox is that by consciously acknowledging your dark potential, you are far less likely to be unconsciously controlled by it. The man who can admit to his own inner tyrant, who knows its face and its arguments, is far less likely to become an actual tyrant in his external life. The woman who can own her righteous anger, who can feel its fire without being consumed by it, can learn to use it as a powerful, focused tool for creating healthy boundaries and effecting necessary change, rather than having it leak out in the form of passive aggression or simmering resentment. But beyond this crucial act of psychic hygiene, integrating the shadow means reclaiming the gold that you have mistakenly thrown into the darkness. It means giving yourself permission to be ambitious, even if you were taught that ambition is unfeminine or selfish. It means embracing your assertive, aggressive life force, even if you were taught that to be a good man is to be perpetually gentle and accommodating. It means unleashing your wild, untamed creativity, even if it doesn't fit into a neat, respectable, or profitable box. This is terrifying work. It often feels like a betrayal of your own identity, a form of moral suicide. You are, in essence, killing the good, simple, one-dimensional person you thought you were, in order to make room for the whole, complex, and far more formidable person you are destined to become. You are trading the comfortable, well-lit prison of the persona for the dangerous, unpredictable, and vibrant freedom of your authentic self. But the shadow is not the only powerful figure waiting for you in the depths of the unconscious. As you descend, you will inevitably encounter the archetype that Jung considered the key to the soul itself, the bridge to the deepest layers of the psyche, the anima in a man, or the animus in a woman. This is the inner, contrasexual figure that represents the repressed and unlived other half of your psychological makeup. It is the embodiment of the qualities of the opposite gender that you have been taught to disown. For a man, the anima is the inner feminine, his connection to the world of feeling, intuition, creativity, relationship, and soul. For a woman, the animus is the inner masculine, her connection to the world of logic, reason, assertion, discernment, and focused action. Just as with the shadow, we are often deeply afraid of this inner figure because it represents a profound threat to our conventional gender identity, which is a cornerstone of the persona. A man raised in a culture that devalues the feminine will be terrified of his own anima. He will fear his own vulnerability as a weakness, his own feelings as irrational, his own softness as unmanly. And because he cannot own these qualities in himself, he will unconsciously project his anima onto the women in his life. He will at first idealize a woman, seeing her as a goddess, a muse, the perfect embodiment of all the soulfulness he lacks. But when she inevitably reveals herself to be a complex human being, his idealization will curdle into its opposite: bitter disappointment, resentment, and even contempt. He will blame her for being too emotional or irrational, never realizing he is raging against his own unlived inner life. Similarly, a woman raised in a culture that devalues the masculine in her will be terrified of her own animus. She will fear her own power as bossy, her own ambition as unladylike, her own sharp intellect as intimidating. She will project her animus either idealizing men as the sole carriers of logic and authority, or battling them in a state of animus possession where she is driven by a rigid, critical and argumentative inner voice. To become who you're afraid to be means you must have the courage to withdraw these debilitating projections and begin to build a conscious, internal relationship with this powerful inner figure. For a man, it means embracing his own capacity for deep feeling, for listening to his intuition, for cultivating a deep, soulful connection to life that is independent of any external woman. For a woman, it means owning her own power, her own logic, her own capacity to build and structure her world with focused intent. This integration is the sacred marriage within the soul, the hieros gamos, that gives birth to a new, more complete and creatively potent personality. It is the source of profound wisdom and unshakable inner balance. This lifelong, courageous process of integrating the shadow and the animus, of consciously shedding the persona to discover a more authentic and robust center, is what Jung called individuation. It is the ultimate journey to become who you're afraid to be. It is not a process of self-improvement in the conventional sense of the word. It is not about adding new skills or polishing your existing personality to make it more socially acceptable. It is rather a process of subtraction, of stripping away all that is false, all that is borrowed, all that is not truly you, until you are left with the unshakable, unique, and indivisible core of your being, the self. The self, in Jungian terms, is the totality of the psyche, the supreme ordering principle that contains both the conscious and the unconscious realms. It is the God image within, the central archetype of wholeness. The ego's primary goal is safety, control, and adaptation to the external world. The self's primary goal is wholeness and authenticity, and it will often push you towards experiences that your ego finds absolutely terrifying, precisely because those are the experiences necessary for your growth and completion. The persistent anxiety you feel, the gnawing sense of meaninglessness in your safe life, the recurring destructive patterns you cannot seem to escape, these are not signs that you are broken or flawed. They are symptoms of a self that is demanding a larger, more authentic life. They are distress signals from the soul. They are the cries of the person you are afraid to be, begging to be born. The journey of individuation, therefore, is a process of learning to listen to this deeper wisdom. It is about shifting your allegiance from the fearful, controlling, and ultimately limited ego to the courageous, expansive, and infinitely wise guidance of the self. So how, in a world that constantly demands conformity and rewards the polished persona, do you actively begin this sacred and terrifying work? The first step is to commit to a practice of radical self-honesty. You must begin to question the motives behind your own goodness and your most cherished virtues. Ask yourself, am I being nice, or am I just afraid of conflict? Am I being humble, or am I just afraid to own my own power and risk the envy of others? Am I being loyal to my traditions, or am I just afraid of the terrifying uncertainty of forging my own path? You must become a detective in your own inner world, hunting for the places where fear is masquerading as morality. Secondly, you must learn to listen to the language of your unconscious. This means, above all, paying scrupulous attention to your dreams. For Jung, dreams are not meaningless noise or random firings of neurons. They are direct, uncensored communications from the self, constantly showing you the parts of yourself you are neglecting, the imbalances in your conscious attitude. Keep a dream journal by your bed. Write them down immediately upon waking, even if they seem absurd or nonsensical. Sit with the imagery. What characters appear? What feelings do they evoke? The figures in your dreams are often personifications of your own repressed parts, your shadow, and your animus, asking for your attention and integration. Finally, You must have the courage to take small, concrete, and deliberate steps in the direction of your fear. This is about embodied action, not just intellectual understanding. If you are afraid of public speaking, join a local Toastmasters club. If you are afraid of your own creativity, sign up for a painting class you know you'll be bad at. If you are afraid of conflict, practice saying a small, respectful no to a minor request this week. Each time you act in defiance of your fear, you are not just changing a behavior. You are making a profound statement to your own psyche. You are signaling that you are willing to expand, to grow, to become larger than the small, safe box of your persona. You are choosing the risk of life over the certainty of mere existence. Ultimately, the philosophy of Carl Jung is not a prescription for a happy, comfortable, or easy life, but a map for a meaningful one. The path he lays out is not for the faint of heart. It is a path of constant challenge, of profound discomfort, and of deep, soul-shaking transformation. To become who you're afraid to be is to accept that life is not about arriving at a safe and final harbor, but about learning to build a ship sturdy enough to navigate the turbulent, open ocean of your own being. It means embracing the paradoxical nature of reality, that your greatest strength lies in your acknowledged vulnerability, that your most profound wisdom is hidden in your darkest thoughts, and that true freedom is found not in avoiding your fears, but in walking directly towards them and through them. When you dare to undertake this journey, the world itself seems to transform, not because it has changed, but because you are seeing it with new, more whole eyes. You stop seeing life as a series of threats to be managed, and you begin to see it as a grand, unfolding mystery to be participated in. Your relationships become deeper and more authentic, because you are no longer hiding behind a mask or projecting your unlived life onto others. Your work becomes more meaningful because you are infusing it with your unique creative spirit. You develop a deep, unshakable sense of inner authority, a quiet confidence that is not dependent on external validation, because it is rooted in the direct, lived experience of your own wholeness. The fear never entirely disappears, for to be alive is to be vulnerable. But your relationship to it changes fundamentally. It ceases to be a barrier that stops you, and it becomes a compass that guides you, constantly pointing you in the direction of your own becoming. You finally understand, with a certainty that settles in your very bones, that the person you were so afraid to be was not a monster to be slain, but a god in exile, waiting patiently in the depths of your own soul for you to summon the courage to finally call it by its true name, yourself.